Three, two, one. We're live.
All right.
What's up, guys?
How you doing?
Hello.
First episode of the ParaBiz Podcast. Welcome. This is ParaBiz Pi. We also have Kay and
Hello.
Jay.
How you doing?
So,
All right.
guys.
So, we're just going to be talking a couple of topics we've got here, and we're just going to, just see how this goes and have some fun doing it, all right?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
So, as everyone knows, we are a parallel economy-centered business. Our job and our mission here is to create a substantial parallel economy that can help pull resources away from the modern mainstream communist-built economy. So, we've got a couple of topics here. Who would like to start with what? What would you guys think?
Man, I kind of want to know, what is a parallel economy? What is that? Where'd this idea come from? Do either of you know where it came from?
That's a fantastic question, Kay.
Pi, what do you say?
Well, it's interesting. It's definitely a topic that's been talked about a lot in recent months. I think Andrew Torba, he's definitely brought it to the forefront and definitely started a lot of discussion on it. But it's definitely a way older idea. Doing my own research, we found this guy. What's his name? Vaclav Benda, and I probably butchered that name, but that's okay. But he was a Czech writer, author, ideologue, whatever other terms you want to call him. But he was very much for creating parallel systems, or he called it parallel polis, whatever. But
Polis as in city, a parallel city.
Parallel polis as in city. There you go. But under the Soviet Union, when Czech and Slovakia, all those countries were under the USSR, and if you want a good piece, he wrote this paper back in, I believe it was the 70s. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It is I think it's already just called Parallel Polis, but it's a very interesting paper. You guys should check it out. You might be able to find it on your
where can we find
libraries.
It?
You might be able to find it on your local library's website, or you could probably find a PDF online. Just do a little bit of research and you'll find it.
And if there's enough people that want it, we'll link it on our website at parabiz.biz.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I think that's something that maybe we should do is create a list of links that we mentioned throughout the podcast.
We can have an article be published and have the podcast link and all that, all the links relevant on there.
For sure.
Some of the stuff that Vaclav talked about in his writings were things like having a parallel culture, parallel education, sciences, things that were not controlled by the communist system that was in place when he was writing in his country. And so those kinds of industries, education is a big one because it controls the mindsets of the future that we need to build. And something that is actually, with technology in today's age, is I think a lot more feasible than it was before. Wherein before you used to have to physically, write books and get all the kids together and teach them all collectively. Nowadays with technology, you can do things like have programs available that parents can directly just give their kids, and discussing various topics from an actual right-wing perspective.
Well, even just with the internet, everything's archived and nothing truly gets deleted. It's very rare that something is outright scrubbed from the internet. So this information will likely always be out there, no matter what.
It's definitely
Hopefully, that's the idea anyway.
it's. Oh, go ahead, Pi.
Well, definitely Benda's overarching idea is he mentions in this paper or pamphlet he wrote that the parallel economy or parallel polis is the goal of it is to preserve everything that's good and true in within the scope of a wider culture that does not value truth or anything, goodness, Christian society, anything along those lines.
Now, it's interesting that you bring this up, both of you. The thing that I can get behind it's the Soviet Union. It's one of the worst places to live during the time of its reign. But why here? Why in the U.S.? Why isn't the U.S. supposed to be the beacon of light, the shining city on the hill? Like, why? What's the urgency?
Well, I think the urgency is that if you've been paying attention to politics over the past 5 years or so, we're recording this in 2022. The landscape has changed completely, where there are now very vocal socialists and soon-to-be communists who are exercising political power in the United States. And what this really is not it's not a first signal of socialism coming into the United States. What it is they have consolidated enough power that they feel comfortable to be very public about their beliefs. So culturally, it is no longer unusual to find actual communists in the streets trying to perform their revolution for the American government. And it's the fact that, if you look at the political parties, they have very increasingly become corrupt and supported a lot of these people who are taking away our fundamental liberties, doing things like censoring, anyone on the right wing, anyone to the right of Hillary Clinton, really, they'll censor. And deplatforming and debanking and putting, just regular political figures on no-fly lists. And you see things like social media companies actually partnering with the government to censor not just political candidates, but political people who are in power, so politicians. In our House of Representatives right now, as of this recording, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan are both representatives, federal representatives, and they are both banned off of Twitter. And so, that's the reason why we need this parallel economy to exist, is because we actually don't have control of the infrastructure of our society, of our culture. All the universities have become liberalized, and they're actively teaching Marxism in the schools. And saying it's normal. They think it's normal. The banks, they're all supporting these organizations, these institutions, and they won't do business with you if you are actually genuinely right wing, if you believe in God and morality. And so that's the need. That's why there's a need for this. Is because over the past, you can debate about timelines, but at least 100 years, they've slowly been getting into positions of power and influence in the United States. And they now are exerting their power upon us. And that is why we need the alternatives to these people, so that we're not beholden to their power, so that we can maintain our liberties and our freedoms.
Yeah, I think, you said so much there, but I think the biggest thing you said is when you touched on the banning on social media.
The government's partnering up. That's kind of what you have with the Trusted News Initiative.
Yeah.
What they're doing with coronavirus information. But the Trusted News Initiative was founded for the purpose of, I believe it had nothing to do with vaccines or coronavirus or anything along those lines. I think it was founded with the stated purpose of dealing with I think like it, something with like democracy or election misinformation, things along those lines.
It's scary when you start hearing the idea, or when you start learning that the government is involved in the media and is involved in the press. One of the biggest checks and balances for the government on a massive scale is the press. It's supposed to have disdain for the government, and or at the very least favor the masses more. But what happens is when you have people that are deemed too big to fail, or are deemed essential to the what you could say the propaganda machine. You start seeing, like Kay said, Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene being banned. They hadn't done anything. They hadn't called for violence, but that happens nowadays. And in my opinion, I think that when you start limiting open dialogue, when you start limiting the ability to counter speech with other speech, it marks the true beginning of the end in a free society.
Yeah, and one of the great things is that we do already have an alternative to Twitter available. So we've seen so many little small startups of Twitter alternatives come into existence and flutter out. There's always a wave, whether it's Parler or Getter or there's this or that. They always come up and then they disappear and then they fall out. And nobody's really been able to capture a consistent audience on these Twitter alternatives except for Gab. So Gab's been the only one that has been, for years since its founding, has been consistently gaining traction. They were deplatformed, all of their services, their hosting, etc. They were deplatformed from those, and they had to create their own. And they did that, and now they are anti-fragile, where like Parler was not. Parler got taken down immediately by media, and they weren't able to get their own systems online. While Gab has gone through that and is on the other side of that and already has that infrastructure in place, so that they are no longer beholden to the government or the communists in these corporate institutions.
Yeah, I want to. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think as like social media continues to, as social media websites like Twitter, Facebook, those types, as they continue to crack down on these, I think we're going to see a wider acceptance of these alternative tech platforms. I think with Parler and, well, we're seeing it right now with Getter, but with Parler, we saw like a migration over to it when Donald Trump was banned off Twitter, along with some other figures, some of them right wing, some of them conservative. But and that's what caused that initial migration. But then once the website started having issues, people went away from that. Now we're seeing companies like Getter trying to gain more users by buying out influencers like Joe Rogan to try to get their user base over to their website. I think the larger migration will happen widely. It will happen because of word of mouth, and it will happen because of crackdowns. Most people are going to stay right where they are until they get kicked off. And Parler and Getter and perhaps Truth Social, we'll see how that goes in the future. That's going to be released in a month or two. But all of these are driven purely by marketing. We'll see what happens when people are forced to choose an alternative.
Yeah. one of the things that I wanted to read was directly from Gab. They say, at Gab, we believe that the future of online publishing is decentralized and open. We believe that users of social networks should be able to control their social media experience on their own terms rather than the terms set down by big tech. And that's it. That should be the baseline for what has become now a utility, and what has become now a digital public square. You can't gag someone's mouth in the middle of Times Square because you don't like what they're saying. You can't. The only way that you can get them to stop talking is yell at them, or to have a conversation with them. And it's important that we don't cede ground on this, because if the ground is ceded to the point where nothing can be changed, we've lost. There's no losing this battle and come up at the next one. Each battle is a growing momentum for the other side. And if we win this battle, we'll gain momentum for the next one. But if we lose it, we have so much more to gain back. And this one is one of the biggest, and it's only the first. It's, in my opinion, the first major battle against authoritarians and the populace. And if we don't win this, we've got a big problem on our hands.
I'd like to, at this point, segue to our sponsors. No one. If you'd like to become a sponsor, go ahead and email us at contact@parabiz.biz with your information, and we can go ahead and talk about sponsorship. Now time to segue back to the podcast.
All right. I think it's just really cool how, as we record this right now, most people, I would say, have barely even touched upon the idea of a parallel economy. Unless you are a user of Gab or something along those lines, or you follow some influencer that talks about these things a lot, most people have not heard of this term. Even if you Google the term, you're not going to find much there, or use any other search engine. Now, I think that's going to change in the near future. Who knows if that's a year or 2 years, or, who knows how long, until things get so bad to the point that we are really going to have to rely on these parallel structures that we're going to be building. But I think it's we just stand at like a very important fork in the road, and we really have the opportunity to start building these parallel structures, this parallel economy, and get ahead of the game,
Yeah, and our general purpose here at ParaBiz Media is to actually give some exposure to these parallel economy businesses that have been created and are being created throughout the next couple of years. It'll be necessary for us to find them and identify them, and to actually use them as a community if we're against the corporate communists. And so, in that respect, if you have a parallel business, or you would like to have exposure with your business that is not connected to the globalist system, you can go ahead and email us at contact@parabiz.biz, and we'll get in contact and we'll talk about that. We would like to really make sure that the companies and businesses that we work with and we vet and that we investigate are actually alternatives, and not a fake alternative meant to siphon off our resources and keep us as members of the communist economy. We genuinely want the parallel economy to succeed, and that's part of what we want to do as ParaBiz Media, as a group.
For sure. So if you guys had to summarize what our main goal is, what would you summarize? I mean, obviously, we just talked about how we want to promote these businesses and whatnot, but what would you say is like the ultimate goal of this company?
It's to support the parallel economy.
For sure.
That is the ultimate goal. To put it quite simply, and acting as a media company, specifically in regards to business in this field of the parallel economy, I think we can do that pretty effectively. And so, that's what I would say our primary purpose is, our primary goal is in that regard.
And to go off of that, our end goal is it's not to find a ceiling. It's not just to find a camp, be like, okay, we're all good over here. Our goal is to become big enough to, one, not be ignored. And that's the biggest one. And that's how you start steamrolling the process. Now, we're not saying go attack other businesses. That'd be insane. What we're trying to do is trying to provide a morally sound alternative that also not only justifies the decision, but justifies the money. Because those are two different things. You can justify the want, be like, all right, I really want to support you, but I can't afford it. But then also to be as much as an alternative as possible that is so compelling to change the cash flow.
And I'd also like to add, if people want a little more detail about us section, if they go to our website, ParaBiz.biz, that's B-I-Z, and there's an About Us page, we can give you a little bit more of an idea of what we're about.
For sure. And I think it's really about, Kay, I know you wrote an article about this, but, and you can check it out on our website, Diverting Cash Flow to the Parallel Economy. It's under the articles section. But, really, we just want to redirect as much money, as much revenue, as much profit, as much as we can away from people that hate us, right? We want to, even if your product or your service still buys into the overall economy or is supported by the overall economy in some way, as long as we're redirecting cash and taking money out of their pockets in one way or another, any little bit helps, as where we stand right now. Now, later on, when things get worse, it could be that you have to rely less and less on the overall economy. But as we stand right now, as we're trying to build these structures and be entrepreneurs, start new businesses, really that's the most important thing.
And buy local. Stop. Don't give your money to these corporate huge brands. If you can find a product at a local store, go ahead and choose that local store as opposed to the multinational corporation. That's a big part of bleeding money away from the communist economy. One thing that you have to keep in mind is, when we financially support those companies that end up hating us, they put out propaganda and advertising that demoralizes and says our culture is bad. It is very, very bad. One thing they have to keep in mind when you give them your money is they're using that money to go ahead and finance things that are more against you. They finance bad businesses. They finance foreigners. They finance degeneracy. These are the things that they're doing with your money that you give them. And so, as much as possible, I would encourage you to buy local, buy smaller companies as opposed to bigger companies, and buy from people on the right wing, and do business and trade services and goods with people who actually share your belief system. Don't be a libertarian economist where you say the only thing that matters is the transfer of money. Who you transfer it with is important too.
Yeah, and we're not just saying, I think a lot of people, and especially me, it's easy to confuse someone with your values as someone that is also a sound business person. If someone claims to be conservative and Christian and right wing and doesn't follow that in their business, like maybe outsources stuff to different countries, or maybe outsources especially places where slave labor still exists, are they really supporting the parallel economy? Like, are they really, is that money, one, staying local? And is that money actually going to what they claim to support? Like, and we're all hypocrites of this. We've all got iPhones and Androids. We've all got Nikes and Under Armour. All of those stuff is made overseas. But it starts with a choice to buy things that are not only made here, because that's huge, and because being made here means that it was made by someone who's getting paid here. You're supporting things all around in a complete 360 view, and that means that money is going to stay in this country, and that's another huge after sale thought that you have to have when going to parallel economy, because if you don't do that, then it's all for naught.
All right, we're hitting the 26.5-minute mark. Is there any other topics you guys want to go over real quick before we land the plane?
Well, I think definitely if you're listening to this, you should check out our website, ParaBiz.biz. That's where you'll find our latest articles. It's also where you can find our channels on different social medias, including Gab. We also have accounts on Twitter and YouTube. You can check out our videos on YouTube. But
for now, until we get banned, obviously.
Until we get banned, right. But you can check out our videos on YouTube.
Rumble.
We also have Rumble.
Rumble is an alternative to YouTube, like Gab and Twitter. It is important that you guys go and support your favorite content creators on Rumble as well, because it's going to be, we have to divert from YouTube because it's becoming a authoritarian publisher.
Maybe this is a little off topic here, but like when we're talking about an alternative to YouTube, it gets particularly hard because video hosting is such an expensive business in general. But I think the guys over at Rumble have been doing a very good job at it. What was the other? Odyssey, they're doing a really good job too, but they're doing it a different way using the blockchain. But Rumble, I think, is doing the more traditional way, like the way YouTube originally did it. So definitely go check us out on Rumble, and actually just check out the other videos on Rumble too. It's a really good site, trust me.
And one last thing, I know Kay was talking about this. Shouldn't people be scared because Rumble went public?
Yeah, very interesting. So some important notes about Rumble going public and supposedly selling out or whatever. The original owner of the company still owns, I think, over 70% of the company. So they still have majority absolute control. The entire board that is involved with the company, they're all the same people. They didn't bring on new people. What they did was they put a portion of their company on the open market, sold it for I think $200 million in cash flow, and so they are going to use that liquid capital to try and close a little bit of the gap with YouTube, where YouTube likes to pay their influencers a lot, and well, they don't like to, but they do, and so Rumble wants to use that money to actually pay its influencers and the people who use its platform, and the same way that YouTube does. And so, YouTube, I don't think has ever turned a profit. They've never been purely profitable on their own. They're always subsidized by Google. And so Rumble doesn't have that, Google parent company over it that's subsidizing all its losses, and so you might see things like that. But rest assured that Rumble did not sell out. They're the same as before. They still have absolute control. If that changes, you'll hear it here first. I promise you that.
You will. And it's important that, because I know a lot of people, I remember hearing a lot of people were upset. And it's not just because they're going public does not mean that they're going completely out of here, because they know why they're here. They contact those people like that. For example, people that are kicked off of YouTube that are very prominent talk to the people who run Rumble, and it's a mutual understanding of why they're there. They're not there to publish. They're there to just provide a platform. And that is not what we're doing here. We are a publisher. And we're telling you outright, we are a publisher. All right? And that's what we're doing. But we're a publisher that is promoting truth and honesty. And it's not our truth, which means a lie. It's truth.
Another note about Rumble, they are a Canadian company, but they are moving to the U.S. They have a big headquarters being built in Florida, I believe. And
which is great.
This is great, yes. And so, while they are not an American company, they are subject to things like Canadian common law and the things like hate speech and all that. So, you just be aware of that when you're on that platform and seeing what people post, that because of that, they may have to censor until they move. Where they can censor a little
from
bit.
What I can tell so far, though, just looking at the videos that I've seen on there, they've done a pretty good job of not censoring things. I've seen some videos on there that will get banned from YouTube in a heartbeat. So
yeah, absolutely. And really, I'm saying that because if you see the company itself like put out a statement on like hate speech or whatever, it's because they have to while they're in Canada. In America, we're blessed that we don't have to necessarily do that.
And watch as I'm predicting here now, as this year unfolds, as we're going to the midterms, the censorship is going to be amped up. And watch, what wasn't banned last year could be considered banned this year. And watch for Rumble. This is a year to promote Gab and Rumble. These years are to promote parallel economies, because you'll see these companies, the big ones, at their worst. This year, it's an election year, and it's a midterm year, and the Democrats did not do well in the midterms, or not in the midterms, in the House and Senate this past presidential race. So they are desperate. So they will pull out all the stops. So be on the lookout and watch for this. And you will have to dig, because if you're getting your news from these sources, you're already misinformed. Done and done. So you have to start looking at what's popping up everywhere else.
All right, landing the plane. We'd like to thank you guys for joining us on this podcast. You can look at our website, parabiz.biz, and check out some more. If you want to contact us, go ahead and email contact@parabiz.biz, and we hope you guys have a very good day.